I'ma do it again. Watch me win, then watch me do it again. Tell them I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for it.
Welcome back to the channel. Today, I decided that I was gonna do something different. I'm gonna give y'all some legalese tonight. We're gonna put on our legal law hats and break down this Supreme Court decision that just happened in the Trump birthright citizenship case, if you will. We're gonna break all this down because I think there's a lot of narratives out. Some of them are maybe true. Some of them are not rooted in anything but fear. So I wanted to break down what exactly happened in this case because I think a lot of people think it's about one thing, but it's really about something else. So let's get into it. So like I said, so this is Trump versus CASA Incorporated. Now, trust me, this could change the way federal laws are challenged forever. And the reason why is because of the ruling. No, this case isn't just about immigration. It's about power, actually. Judicial power. And whether or not a single judge can stop the federal government cold across the whole country. And what I mean by cold, meaning that if a judge in one jurisdiction rules, that becomes the law of the land and stops everything that was going on preceding that. So let's break this down, y'all. I got a little visual here. So how did we get here? Earlier this year, when President Trump first took office, right, he was signing a bunch of executive orders, just signing them every single day. It seemed like Stephen Miller was bringing him executive actions to sign. And this one in particular, Executive Order 14160, states that some children in the U.S., specifically those whose mothers are undocumented and whose fathers are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents, they would not automatically be granted citizenship. Now, this goes to what some people consider the birth tourism narrative. Is like some people, they decide, they know they come across the border, they've come across the border illegally, they're in the country illegally, they're not citizens, they don't have permanent residency, and all of a sudden, because they have a child in the United States, they anchor a child here, they call them anchor babies, they anchor a child here, and then that child is a citizen, so that allows the parent to be in the country illegally while they take care of the child. Well, Trump wants to stop that with this. And his executive order basically wouldn't automatically grant them citizenship. Now, is it controversial? Absolutely. It is absolutely controversial. But from a legal standpoint, is it questionable? That's what this lawsuit was really about. So what happened was 3 federal judges, they jumped in, they got lawsuits, and they automatically blocked the order entirely. Soon as Trump, it was almost as if soon as Trump put the ink on the actual executive order and was showing it to everybody. Y'all know how they do. They sign their name and then they show it to the cameras and all that. Before the ink was even dry on this, you had judges already blocking it. Not just for the people suing, but for everyone in the country. And that's, in the legal sense, that's what's called a universal injunction, right? So if y'all see my little graphic up there, it says universal injunctions which prohibit enforcement against anyone who exceeds the equitable authority of federal courts. Okay, so the Trump administration, they fired back at this. They were not happy about this, saying, man, you know what? Hold on. Courts aren't allowed to stop a law from the whole nation just because one person sues. And that what took place after that in this lawsuit is why we ended up at the Supreme Court, because Trump's administration is basically saying, listen, a district judge cannot just block something and all of a sudden that becomes the standard law. Because if that's the case, then we'll never get anything passed, because you can get judges on both sides of the aisle to just block stuff if they don't see fit. And this is how your government doesn't work. And universal injunctions have been used a lot over the last, few years by both the Republicans and Democrats. I'm just not going to blame Democrats for this, because Republicans have been doing it too. And it's not fair, because it basically limits what the government could do, because anybody can sue, and then if they don't like a law, they sue, and then next thing you know, it's getting blocked. So the legal question in this is now the Supreme Court, right? Because this is the legal question that they had to answer. They weren't trying to decide whether or not Trump's executive order was unconstitutional. So they were in task with looking at Executive Order 14160 to see if it was unconstitutional. At least not yet. What they actually were being called to rule on is, could a federal judge issue rulings that block federal policies for everybody? Or should their rulings only apply to the people who sued? So if you file a lawsuit, you're the only person that's supposed to be protected in that lawsuit. It's a technical question now, but the answers could have massive consequences for how the government and courts interact. So this became before the Supreme Court. And on June 27th, 2025, the Supreme Court gave us the answer. And that answer was no. They ruled that universal injunctions exceed the equitable authority that Congress has granted to federal courts. So what does that mean? They said no, that a district judge, a federal judge in this jurisdiction, if I file a lawsuit, it only protects me. It's only about my case and my case only. And if you want to have a bunch of people, then what you need to do is file a class action lawsuit, like most people do when they want to get a lot of people in done. This was done by Judge Amy Coney Barrett. It was about 119 pages. She wrote the actual concurrence. Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote the actual dissent. And the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in this decision. It's saying, and just sweeping, this injunction fed, because what Amy Coney Barrett actually stated in her actual concurrence was that these sweeping injunctions are not rooted in the historical power of the courts under the Judiciary Act of 1789. Back then, the courts could only give relief to the people who actually were involved in the case. So, as I mentioned earlier, if I file a lawsuit or you file a lawsuit, then you are the only person that this lawsuit affects. If more people want to say that they're affected by it, then that becomes a class action, and then they could come onto your case and they become a plaintiff as well. But a judge cannot just rule just unilaterally, and then that protects the entire country, because if that's the case, then everybody will just be filing lawsuits all the time, and everything will be getting blocked, and it'll just be a bunch of stuff, and government would not work. And they're not really working right now. They even said that the courts aren't supposed to be mini legislators, and that letting one judge block a law nationwide, that could create legal chaos and encourage forum shopping. Now, what forum shopping is basically you find somebody just to file a lawsuit because they don't like a law coming in place. So if somebody thinks that the government should be spending money on the National Defense Spending Bill, so they'll file a lawsuit in this state, and then a judge will rule and block it, and next thing you know, the NDAA is not getting signed. So for now on, right now, as it stands, if you want a national ruling in a case, you're going to have to file a lawsuit, a class action, or you're going to have to go through Congress. And so this forces Congress to actually do their job because they, we got equal powers of government, right? So the president, the executive, the judiciary, and then we got the legislative branch. The legislative branch has not been doing their job, and they haven't done their job in almost 20 years because all they do is they've been falling and, getting in line behind lawsuits. So they didn't have to do anything. Now this makes them have to actually legislate and actually write laws in order for us to be able to see if the law is constitutional or not. So I just wanted to just unpack that real quick, right? So what this just did, because in a sense, this just made it harder to block federal laws. That's what this did. It just made it harder to block federal laws nationally. If you're gonna be suing, for an executive, or like if you're gonna be sued like a federal law or like an executive action, any of that stuff, your win is in the court now is only gonna protect you, not the entire country. There ain't no more shortcuts to this. Class actions are going to be the new route. And if these people because these are lobbyists, they pay people to do this. If they want to represent more people, you're going to need to go through the proper channels. Like Rule 23, the class actions, which has strict rules. So they're going to have to go through like all of this. The courts just got more limited, y'all. This ruling kind of trims back the power of judges. Now, one thing that I want to see how this is going to affect, because like we always get these cases about immigration and civil rights and environmental policies. Now, when these cases come up, these cases are only going to affect the parties that are involved in these cases, which I think is important, because if you feel like something is going on in the government that you don't like, you're going to have to come off the couch and stop having people do the work for you. You're going to have to actually file these lawsuits yourself. I think it's huge. I think this is huge. Both liberal judges and conservative judges alike. You can't put a national break on executive power anymore. Now, some people may say this is lawfare because now it gives Trump the ability to do what he wants to do in his agenda. But the people voted for that, right? Like, you can be mad all you want about his executive actions and what they're doing and all these things, but people went out, voted. Some people stayed at home and didn't vote. So because of that, elections have consequences. Whether you think this is good or bad depends on how much you trust the current administration, right? But legally, I think that this decision redefines the boundaries of how these courts and what their reach is, right? The judicial reach had gotten out of control. And I am one that is about fairness, but some of these judges, they were just, blocking stuff just to be blocking it. And we still got a country to run, and everything can't be getting tied up because some judge just blocked it real quick because they're on the other side of the aisle. I think this takes away the political portion of it with these judges and makes it so they're not liberal or conservative, I guess, in a sense, because now they don't have the power to be able to stop stuff that Trump is doing. So there y'all. So that's it right there. So that's this law in a nutshell, y'all. And this case, Trump versus CASA Incorporated. I don't know how many people are paying attention to this. But with this ruling that Amy Coney Barrett gave and what the Supreme Court voted for, I really think that this is going to go down as one of the most important pieces of law. This ruling is going to be one of the most consequential pieces of our generation, because we haven't seen anything like this in a long time. I just think that from a standpoint with this, Trump got one on. You know, he got one over, y'all. This is a win, a little bit of a win. So there are some cases out there that are challenging birthright citizenship. So now that those who decided they want to challenge it, they're gonna have to file a class action lawsuit. So you're gonna need millions and millions and millions of people to sign on to it for them to be protected. Because the only person that's gonna be protected that files that lawsuit is gonna be the person that does it. What if this law would have took place back in when Ed Bloom had the AAPI community to go after affirmative action? What if this ruling on Trump versus CASA had came before that? Do y'all know that would have kind of changed precedent? Because it only would have affected those that were complaining by this ruling. But now, it's funny how these things happen, right? They don't happen in succession, right? They just kind of go to they don't go retroactively, right? They just kind of happen. But I thought I was very curious that this was being challenged. These lawyers, right? They know how to nitpick pieces of legislation to get the answers that they want to certain things. So they'll know how to write legislation. This all this was. This was just a check. Okay, do the courts? Can a judge block what we're doing? Let's get the Supreme Court to decide. The Supreme Court says no, they can't. It only protects the people who actually filed a lawsuit. They're like, great. Now we can implement the agenda, because now Trump gets the opportunity to sign more executive actions, and then the laws are still written by Congress, but his executive actions can move forward in a small sense. And those who challenge in the birthright citizenship in the 13th Amendment is only going to be the 14th Amendment is only going to affect them. Honestly, when it comes to this 14th Amendment case, I can see this court ruling in favor of Trump for this one. And I think it's going to change. It's not really going to change too much. It's just going to mean that you can't anchor children here unless you're a permanent resident or a U.S. citizen. You have at least one parent that's a U.S. citizen. You're not going to be able to just cross the border, have a child, and that child become a citizen anymore. They're going to there's only like 30 countries in the world that actually have this type of unfeathered citizenship. Most of the world, whatever your parents are, no matter if you were born on their soil or not, you're not a citizen of their country. You're a citizen of the country that your parents are citizens of. For the vast majority of the country, like I said, only 30 countries in the world actually have this, and the United States is one of them. So, but that's it for tonight, y'all. If y'all found this helpful to kind of understand how this case went down, let me know in the comments, y'all. Let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Y'all been helping me out, and I appreciate y'all for sticking around, rocking with your boy. So thanks so much for tonight. This is a special episode. Until next time, y'all stay informed, stay engaged, and keep it culture. Talk to you later.